Thanks so much for joining us this hour. I don't know about you, but I got credit card debt. Most Canadians do. In fact, most Canadians are living well beyond their means. Did you know that Canadians are the most debt leveraged they've ever been in the last quarter century? Canadians have a debt-to-income ratio of 163 and rising. And on top of that, we don't really have a plan in place to make sure our wealth stays, perpetuates, grows. So today on the show, we're going to see if we can reverse that. I welcome from 1+12, Glenn Estrabillo. Hello.
Hello, excellent. Thank you very much, Dave, for having us on your show.
You are the CEO, right?
Yes, I'm the CEO of 1+12, and 1+12 is a professional real estate investment training company. And our mission at 1+12 is really to develop people into financially independent and free human beings.
Mm-hmm. And joining Glenn today, Jonathane Ricci, a legal counsel. And Jonathan, why are you here today? What are you going to be adding to the show?
What I'm going to be adding is a lot of people don't think of certain legal issues that should be thought of and solved when they make investments in real estate or get into the real estate game. So I'm going to talk about those.
All right. Are Canadians really in this much trouble with the debt these days? This is all true then?
Yes, this is all true. I didn't believe in myself when I saw the statistics as they rolled out over the last 2 years there. And it's interesting to note because I started personally investing in the U.S. right around the time when the U.S. debt-to-income ratio hit 170. And I saw that, that was an untenable situation for the average American family. And when I combined that ratio with families' ability to afford housing, I saw right around 2006, 2007, the conditions that were going to be set for a massive downturn. And so that's why I began investing in the U.S. And now here we are back home in Canada. And we're floating very closely to where the average American family's debt-to-income ratio was back in 2006, 2007. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've positioned a lot of the clients that work with us and a lot of the financial partners that work with us at 1+12. Over the last 8 months, we've been positioning ourselves to become a service provider and a solution provider to many Canadian families that are starting to feel that pinch, not only in their credit card debt but in their wallets. There's not a lot of month at the end of the money, as we say in the industry.
So now, when did you form the company? And as I understand it, the company's there to offer people uncommon strategies for producing wealth, protecting it, and perpetuating it.
Yeah, so we created 1+12 together with my 3 other business partners because we saw that there was a need to provide education for the average Canadian family. Whether or not they wanted to be an investor, we just saw the need to educate the general public on basic financial intelligence and astuteness so that people not only have an opportunity to produce real wealth, but what we train and teach people at 1+12 is you also have to, even before you think about earning $1 of profit, you've got to protect and secure your assets first so that you can be able to perpetuate it and pass down your wealth to future generations. And we believe it's very important for people to understand that the protection and the perpetuation of your wealth goes hand in hand with the production of your wealth. So you got to actually think of all 3 steps all at once. And that's why we work so closely with Jonathane Ricci here in his law offices, because he's one of the legal counsels that understands the importance of protection and perpetuating wealth even before investing the first dollar. Wouldn't you agree, Jonathan?
Absolutely. It's, some people just don't really consider some of the legal issues involved when they're building their wealth. And they can run into some big problems for themselves if they don't really consider those and paper their transactions properly.
Throughout the hour, if you've got questions for either of my guests, here's the phone numbers. Their lines are open at 519-570-2545. If you're out of town, it's toll-free at 1-800-570-5715 or star 570, hands-free on your cell phone. We actually have a call, so we'll throw the headphones on and take a call from Steve, who's calling in from Kitchener. Hi there, Steve. You're on 570 News.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not bad. As soon as I heard you talking about investing in real estate, I haven't heard everything you talked about yet, but something has come up recently. I own a couple of my own properties already outright. Like the bank don't have anything to do with them, which obviously a lot of people aren't like that right now. The banks own more than they do. But I'm playing around with an idea, and my wife thinks I'm nuts because she's like, I don't want to mess with the houses or anything like that. But I said, well, the interest rates are so low right now, but actual investments are up. And I said, and I don't know if I'm crazy or not, or if it's a gamble. I'm thinking, if it works, I'll make a bundle, or at least break a little more than even. Like, they're talking 1.7 to 1.9 in some of the banks right now for mortgages, and I don't have a mortgage. And my value of my home is almost 3 times what it used to be worth. So what I'm thinking is, if investments in the market are paying like 5 and 6% or even higher, then why not take the chance, invest, like borrow, say 60 to 80% of the net worth, and then I can afford to pay the mortgage, and then at the end, 5 years later, I cash it in. I've made like 3 points on everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, Glenn, does that sound to you?
Yeah, Steve, that sounds very sound to me. And I totally appreciate your wife's concern there, because it represents a very non-conventional strategy or play. But your logic is definitely sound. If the cost of your borrowing is just hovering below 2%, and you have the opportunity to generate returns on your investment by investing in investment properties, that sounds like a great deal.
I even was looking at the fact that I'm not a senior, but I'm not even know if I'm eligible for it. But there are seniors, how they say you can borrow 40% of your value of your home, things like that. That I thought was kind of crazy or cutthroat, because like if you die, they take your home, or the family has to pay the difference. But if you do it properly, if you own your home and you take 40% of it, and then you wouldn't be paying any mortgage, you're basically just going to invest the total. That's even a feasible idea. But I don't know if most of the seniors out there, what they're doing is they're just taking that chunk of money, hoping that they can pay it off later, and then they're traveling or renovating the home or whatever, which I think is crazy.
Yeah.
But if you can take 40% of your worth, they'll give it to you as long as you are in the home, which I love that idea. That makes sense. And then invest that for 5 to 10 years. As long as you don't die, you basically are making you're making all of it, plus you're not paying a mortgage on the total because they're giving you the money.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said before, there's not a lot of people in the situation where their homes are paid for anymore. So it's not a big investment for a lot of people.
That's correct. Yeah, Steve. And the only thing I would add to that is, as long as what you're moving the capital into, you've number one, been able to secure that capital when you're investing in the investment property. What I mean by that is as long as what you're taking that money out of, the equity from your home, whatever you're investing it into, say another investment property, to ensure that you're able to negotiate the acquisition of that new investment property at a significant discount, so that worst case scenario, should something go wrong, you can still liquidate that investment property and still maintain security of your capital, meaning you're not going to lose the money you invested because you bought it so low with respect relative to the fair market value, that even in the worst case scenario, if something should happen with that investment property, you can still pull your capital out and maybe even profit, depending on how deep the discount is in the beginning. So that's also another very important thing to keep in mind as well.
A lot of people, I wanted to say, is they don't realize, like they're saying, we're building a lot of high-rises recently, we're building a lot of condo units recently, not for sale, for rent. And I argue with people all the time, I think it's brilliant, because there's still a huge amount of business and money to be made in that business, because literally you're building for a set amount, you're charging, the rates of rent are ridiculously high now. So even if you generate that for 10 to 12 years and then turn around and flip them for condos, you're going to come out way ahead. Because I was looking at an investment recently, it's an investment group that they're paying 12.7% because they diversified so well in so many good businesses. And I mean, when was the last time in the last decade we've heard of 12.7%?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
12%. Every 5 years you're doubling your money. It's easy math.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so 12.7%, when I got this paper in front of me, unless they're lying through their teeth, who in their right mind would jump on board?
Right, yeah.
Well, exactly. You make a good point, Steve. We actually have to take a break. Steve's given us some great ideas. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about whether they're feasible. Hey, Jonathan, we'll talk to you about the legality of what Steve has got going on in mind, and whether this is the sort of thing that 1+12 teaches people how to do. If you'd like to get more information as you listen to the show, why don't you go to 1plus12.com. That's a great idea. Or you can also give us a call. We'll take more of your calls when we come back, 519-570-2545 or star 570 hands-free on your cell phone. More of Ask the Experts coming up here on 570 News. Glenn Estrabillo is here along with Jonathane Ricci, legal counsel, who's going to be telling us a lot more about the things that you just don't even think about when you're thinking about real estate. And if you'd like more information, well, actually, the other website we want you to take a look at is TriCityWealthWorkshop.com, because you've been doing workshops in our region. We'll be doing them more, I imagine, in the future.
Yep, coming up in the summer. Yep.
All right. And again, our lines are open at 519-570-2545 and star 570 hands-free on your cell phone. Had an interesting call from Steve before the break. He's definitely got some ideas about what he wants to do. Yep. Let's talk about the feasibility of those ideas and the legal ramifications.
Absolutely. The first thing that came to my mind when I was listening to Steve is when you are structuring your borrowing, you want to do it in a way to maximize your tax benefits, to make sure that whatever you're borrowing and the interest you're paying on that, wherever it's coming from, is fully tax deductible, and you're maximizing your tax benefits just off the get-go on your borrowing. And the second thing that came to my mind is, how are you going to hold your investment property? And a lot of people think it's okay, and a lot of people do this, that they hold their investment properties in their own personal name. And one of the things you need to think about is, what kind of liability protection am I using if I hold assets in my own personal name? For example, if someone gets sued in their own personal name and all their wealth is in their personal name, that can be an exposed liability that you don't need to have if you had structured things a little bit differently. And the third thing that came to my mind is, once you're making these great returns, again, on the tax side and the structuring side, are you protecting it from unnecessary exposure or unnecessary taxes and those kinds of things? So there are a lot of legal issues that should be considered and planned before you make that investment.
Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. What Jonathan's also speaking about when he talks about there's a lot of things that have to be taken into account. One of the principles in the protect stage that we empower our financial partners and our clients to think about and take action consistent with is that there are what we call 7 destroyers of capital. It's a really interesting and thought-provoking name, because it's designed to actually have you think that there are actually intrinsic things right now in the current game of commerce, or in the current system that we operate in, that are designed to really erode your capital. Things like Jonathan mentioned, taxation, lawsuits, like if you're getting sued, how to protect and bulletproof your assets against lawsuits. But even things like, things that are inevitable, like death, or things that people may not consider are important when they're investing right off on day one, like critical illness, lack of financial policies, and something that most people miss when they're investing is this thing called inflation, which we call the stealth tax, because it's not like a publicized tax, but inflation is something that erodes your capital over time if you're not careful. So that's some of the things that also I know Jonathan is alluding to when he says there's a lot of things you got to think about legally to protect your assets when you invest.
All right. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what you do for people. If people come to one of your seminars, what are the sort of things they're going to hear, and what are they going to learn? Yeah,
the big thing that they will come to learn and hear about is the difference between the common approach to investing and uncommon approach to investing. So most people have traditionally learned that the common way to invest and build wealth, is you go to school, you work hard, get a good degree, and then you go and you get a good job and with nice benefits, and hopefully after some time you can retire, and hopefully between the time you have that job and the time you retire, you're able to take whatever money is left after the paycheck and paying your expenses and hopefully invest in, some steady asset class. And that's a great procedure. It's just, it's something that's been tried, tested, and true, and it works, but it takes a long time, like 25 plus years to actually retire. Whereas the uncommon approach is something that my partners and I have discovered just from our own life experience can enable people to potentially retire in 5 years. And how we do that is we structure our deals very differently, having the producing and the protecting, the perpetuation of wealth all wrapped up in one on day one. So when people come to our seminars, the first thing that they learn is there's 36 different indicators that we utilize to analyze a certain geographic region to determine whether or not it's conducive to successful investing. Now, 36 indicators sounds like a lot. However, it's important to ensure that you have the greatest opportunity to succeed with your investment capital that you're mobilizing. So that's one of the big things they learn right off the bat. For example, I'll give you the top 5 to your listeners there, Dave. One of the top factor of the 36 indicators is population growth. Because as real estate investors, we want to invest where the growth trends of a city or a jurisdiction has been historically growing and is projected to grow. Because more people mean more demand for real estate, which is better for real estate investors. A second one is job growth. We like to invest in areas where the job growth has been consistently strong and is trending to continue to increase, because more employment, more people who are employed, more people who have liquid money to actually spend as tenants or occupants or buyers and sellers of the properties that we invest in. A third thing is what we call the affordability index, which is a measure of the average family's ability to afford housing. So basically the statistic that we go by is as long as the average family's income is spending no more than 33% of their household income, then we say they can afford their house. If they're spending more than that, then they actually can't afford the house they're living into. So as real estate investors, we want to know what the average affordability index is for the people based on the salaried incomes of the people in the cities. Fourth one is mortgage interest rates. As you mentioned earlier, or even Steve, the previous callers, mentioned, we are at historic lows of mortgage interest rates, so that's just an automatic plus for us as real estate investors. That means the cost of borrowing money for us as investors is very low relative to the potential returns on our investment. And then the fifth thing is something a lot of people, I'm surprised, don't even talk about, but it's something really critical to us as uncommon investors, which is what we call your gut instinct. And a lot of times people don't actually trust their gut. They go with the opinions and emotional responses of their family or friends. People who are good and well-meaning, but they just don't have the level of sophistication to advise newer investors on what the correct course of action would be. Whereas if people would just stick to their gut and ask them, 2 questions, am I going to be successful investing here? And is this property or is this asset consistent with my overall investment goals? And if they just allow themselves some time to quietly reflect on that, 9.999 times out of 10, they get the correct answer. And that's something that we work with our clients to really harness and take ownership of and responsibility of, because it's a very powerful, intangible asset that everybody has and is born with. So innately we have a certain level of intuition and gut that if we learn to listen to and trust, can always guide us in the proper direction 100% of the time. Wouldn't you agree, Jonathan?
Absolutely. It's I get people that come into my office, and just some of the things that that they don't think about that I throw on the table. just makes total sense and what you just said. So.
All right. Well, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that when we come back from break. We are going to take another quick break. News is coming up. My guest today on the show, Glenn Estrabillo, CEO of 1+12 and Jonathane Ricci Legal Counsel. If you'd like to get more information while you're at home listening to the show, fire up your web browser and go to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com. And if you'd like to ask questions right now about investing in real estate, call us at 519-570-2545. Out of town, 1-800-570-5715. Or you can call us hands-free on your cell phone at star 570. More of Ask the Experts is on the way here on 570 News. If you've ever even thought about investing in real estate, your next thought was, I don't know how to do it, probably. And that's why we've got our guests here with us today from 1+12, Glenn Estrabillo, CEO, and Jonathane Ricci, Legal Counsel, to try and teach you. That's what the company does, is a real estate investment training so that you can produce, protect, and perpetuate wealth. And they're with us this hour. But before we get back to them, let's get over to the phones and take another call. Daryl has been waiting patiently. Hi there, Daryl. You're on 570 News.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your question for Glenn today?
Yeah, Daryl, that's a great idea. Personally, that's how I started. When I was working as an engineer, I was a new graduate, so I had a lot of student debt, so I didn't have a lot of money, period, when I started investing. And I went to the bank of brother and bank of cousin to leverage their credit as well as to leverage some of their capital to buy my first investment property. So I think it's a brilliant strategy. And the great thing that you pointed out when you said you have about 5% down versus a 25%, one of the things that you can look at, Daryl, is most common investors look to get financing the conventional way, where the requirement is very heavy on you, yourself, the investor, and the qualifications required that would make you have to put like 20-25% down on investment property. But if you look at other strategies for financing, like leverage financing, we work closely with a company called Moneygate, and they specialize in other sources of funding whereby most of the attention is on the collateral itself. So most of the attention is on the actual property. And if the property makes sense and it's cash flowing and there's a lot of equity, they'll put more of a preference on the collateral versus looking at you specifically. So you could actually get into the deal or transaction with much less of your own capital and your family. So you could potentially even get started with maybe 2 or 3 properties right off the bat. So good idea to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I just turned on the radio and I heard, oh my God, I got a call.
Well,
I had another station on. I drive truck, but I'm home now. I'm like, oh.
okay, well, Daryl, I'm really glad you called in, and stop listening to that other station, okay?
I know.
Well, there we go. Thank you so much for your call. We really appreciate it. If you'd like to ask a question, the lines are open at 519-570-2545, and of course, star 570 hands-free on your cell phone. Jonathane, are there any legal ramifications of pooling together with your relatives we should know about? Is this all kosher?
This is all kosher. The one thing I would suggest is that whether it's your brother, sister, husband, wife, relatives, you want to have some agreement in writing at the beginning when you're pulling everything together. One of the common mistakes that people make is listen, it's my brother. I don't need anything in writing. We'll just put some money into a bank account. We'll invest in some real property together. My suggestion is, still have that writing, that agreement in writing, to determine exactly what the expectations are during the investment, and of course the exit strategy. That's a very important aspect to have.
Again, the website to look up while you're listening today, TriCityWealthWorkshop.com. And Glenn, what are some of the other things that folks will learn when they come to one of your workshops?
Yeah, well, Daryl really highlighted one of the other aspects is because most newer investors or even seasoned investors just don't actually realize there's a whole other avenue for financing people's first acquisitions or continuing acquisitions. Like for seasoned investors, most of the common issues that they deal with, and I even dealt with this back when I started, was after investing in X number of properties, there comes a point where banks will no longer lend to you anymore because you're over debt leverage. You're past their mathematical equations for being able to decide to give you more money. So when people are tapped out at that level, what people learn at our seminars is how to access other forms of financing for your transactions. And just like what I had said to Daryl, a big part of that is making sure that the investment asset that you're going to be moving your capital into has a lot of equity, meaning you're able to secure it at a discount, and it's already has a high potential for generating cash flow, because that's important for any lender, whether it's conventional financing or leverage financing. They need to know that if your ability to pay back the loan is hampered, if the investment property is generating decent cash flow, then that mitigates some of the risk on the lender's side. They know that they'll still be able to get paid by the profits from the investment. So that's another thing that we teach at the workshops when we deliver them here in not just Kitchener-Waterloo, but all throughout Southern Ontario. And a big part of how to find these deep discounted deals is we invest with long-term trends. There's 3 steps that we utilize and teach people at the workshops. It's the first step is isolate trends. Second step is formulate a strategy that positions you to profit and benefit multiple times over these long-term trends playing themselves out. And the third one is execution, because we meet a lot of new investors who, you know the phrase paralysis by analysis. Mm-hmm. They get stuck in the analysis stage and they have these great strategies, but they don't capitalize on it because they don't actually do anything about it. Well, part of our workshop is we enable people to take action. While everybody has the opportunity to profit during the weekend, only 2 people live on the court during the weekend actually profit, and everybody else gets a lesson of why they stopped themselves from taking action on a real opportunity that was just as available to them as the actual 2 people who actually capitalized on it. So that's an exciting thing, because we believe at our workshops the only way to effectively transfer our knowledge and experience to the participants is they got to learn by doing. That's actually the only way that we can measure whether or not people learned anything, is if their actions are consistent with what we just taught them. So the workshops are very exciting, and they're very hands-on on the court. And one of the things as well too is as people learn how to invest along with the trends, strategies, and learn how to execute, you know, we tie in a lot of the legal principles too, because as I said, the protection step is just as important as a producing step in wealth generation. So that's where Jonathan comes into play and talks a lot about the uncommon way to hold title of an investment to maximize the security of the asset, but also to minimize the liability. So Jonathan, you want to share a little bit about what you highlight? Or
and this dives into the next topic very smoothly. A lot of Canadians look south to the border to invest in real estate. A lot of Canadians are invested in the U.S. And, liability protection, I mean, let's face it, in the U.S., lawsuits are very frequent. They happen all the time. And Canada's catching up to that, because there's many more lawsuits happening here now. But you want to hold your property in such a way that you protect it from unnecessary liability exposure, from lawsuits or creditors or any of those types of situations. And there are ways to hold your real estate, especially if you're a Canadian invested in the U.S., that protects you from that. And another issue that needs to be considered when you're dealing with the U.S. and you're Canadian is the taxing authority, not only of Canada, but the taxing authority of the U.S., the Internal Revenue Service. And some people set up their cross-border transactions in a way where they unnecessarily pay more tax than they should because they didn't really put a lot of thought or didn't see somebody who was able to structure it a little better to streamline the taxation of the cross-border investment.
We're going to be taking a break very shortly, but we do have another call now. So what we'll do is we'll go and take Michael's question, go to break, and then answer it. Michael's been waiting patiently. Hi there, you're on 570 News.
Hey, how are you?
Good, Michael. What's your question today?
They actually kind of started a couple of minutes ago talking about, the bank looking at the property's potential to return on the investment and on the loan and the likelihood of them to lend accordingly. And so I'm just curious, I'd be interested in doing this because I live in an area where they put up some properties which are obviously geared towards being rental properties, and I don't love it. Let's make lemonade out of lemons and maybe actually invest in one of these things if they've got the potential to return. So who do I talk to? What type of individual should I be looking for to counsel me about how wise a particular investment?
All right, there's the question. Michael, thanks for calling in with it. We'll take a break. And I can already see Glenn. Glenn knows the answer. He's smiling. So we'll be back with Glenn Estrabillo, CEO of 1+12, and Jonathane Ricci, legal counsel. In the meantime, find out more. Fire up your web browser. Head to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com. Ask the Experts returns in just a sec here on 570 News. And on the show today, we welcome guests from 1+12, the company that teaches you how to invest in real estate to produce, protect, and perpetuate wealth. Before the break, Michael called in, said some rental properties going up. Wasn't real pleased, but he's decided maybe he should just invest in one, and he's wondering, who do I talk to get started in this? The answer's pretty plain.
Yeah, the answer's pretty plain. You should go to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com and subscribe there because he'll be able to get access to us directly and, more importantly, get access to some of our strategic partners in the mortgage and financing industry, so that because not every mortgage broker or mortgage financer is created equally. You got to work with people who understand you as an investor, and they have your interest as an investor at heart, so that they go to bat for you when they're talking to all the different lenders, whether they're A lenders like the conventional banks, or B lenders, which are the trust companies, or even C lenders, which are private lenders. So that's why I would recommend that Michael just go to that website, get hooked up with us, so he can communicate with me directly, but also I can put him in touch with the strategic partners in the financing and mortgage industry. So, and as well, for example, another one of our experts and strategic partners being Jonathane Ricci, to teach him, to share with him the legalities about what he wants to do before he actually invests the first dollar into that investment property.
So, did you want to add something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I've been stressing throughout the show, the importance of looking at how you're going to hold any investment you make. And I've been giving this hypothetical example and telling this story for quite some time, and more people followed, and I just wanted to mention it on the show. You have a hypothetical example, a person by the name of Bob, who's driving his car around the streets here in Kitchener, and gets into an accident, whether it's his fault or not. And what happens is that the insurance company usually covers up to a certain limit on your policy. And what happens lately is there's a lot of lawsuits above the policy amount. For example, if the insurance covers $1 million and your lawsuit is for $1.5 million, for that extra $500,000, if it does reach that far, that comes out of you personally. So if you build your wealth personally, there you are exposed. Mm-hmm. This is just one way that you are exposed if you build your wealth personally. And this is something that a lot of people do not consider while they're building their wealth.
Mm-hmm. And it becomes more costly and time-consuming to try to do that and fix the problem after the fact, after the lawsuit's already been put in place. Isn't that right, Jonathan?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
So, again, just some of the amazing things you're going to learn by going to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com and actually going to one of the workshops. Another trend that's happening, of course, as you said, Jonathan, a lot of Canadians are investing in the U.S. But there's got to be some deals going on here at home in Canada. What about those?
Yeah, definitely. We've over the last couple of years, we've noticed waves and waves of Canadians investing in the U.S., which is great because the fundamentals are still there to be successful. But that just told us at 1+12 that we should now start to look in our own backyard here in Canada. And as I had mentioned earlier, some of the things that we teach at the workshop are paying attention to these kinds of long-term trends. And one of them we touched on at the beginning of the show, which was a debt-to-income ratio for Canadians being so high, very close to what the U.S. was at the start of the recession of the last decade. But we also look at a trend of affordability, and Canadians right now are approaching a certain magic number in the affordability index stage where the average Canadian family just has enough money to pay for and afford housing. Now, what that means is the average Canadian family, based on their average income, are a lot more debt leveraged, but they can't pull anywhere from other lines of credits or other credit cards to pay for mortgage payments. And what we're seeing now is that more and more homeowners and borrowers are actually defaulting here in Canada, which is, I was surprised to see the statistics when they rolled out because I couldn't believe it. The only reason why I'm a firm believer is because in the last 8 or 9 months, we've been actually getting calls from people who know homeowners who are defaulting, and they're defaulting quietly. So right now in Canada, families and borrowers are actually finding it hard to make their mortgage payments. And because they have friends and loved ones who care about them, who know us, they've been connecting them to us. So we've been able to position our clients to provide sort of it's what we call mezzanine financing, where we can bridge the gap between getting people out of a potential embarrassing and time-consuming foreclosure situation, stop the foreclosure, buy them some time to get their feet back on the ground financially so that they can then requalify for new financing, new leverage financing. And so we're able to use our capital to move in and out and provide these homeowners, these borrowers, that buffer of time so that they can get back on their feet. And at the same time, we can generate profits, short-term profits for ourselves and for our clients. And so in this type of transaction, everybody wins. The borrower wins. The bank that's foreclosing on them wins because we can actually pay the bank their the outstanding balance owed to them so that they can exit from the transaction, but they first have to stop foreclosing on the homeowner. So the banks win, our clients win, because they get to mobilize their capital, provide this buffer, this mezzanine financing to the homeowner, and generate a profit when the borrower gets back on their feet and refinances and pays them back out. And we win at 1+12 because we get the benefit of having our education and our teachings actually make a real financial difference in the lives of countless people that we ourselves would never have the chance to meet individually with our own circles. So it's like a win-win-win type strategy, and that's what we're finding is now becoming much more prevalent here in Canada. So while most people are flocking down to the U.S., they're leaving behind great deals on the table here in Canada. So, and I'm sure Kitchener-Waterloo in the Tri-City area is no exception. There are families who are in the same position that we're finding homeowners in the GTA are in as well too.
Now, that doesn't mean we're going to abandon the States. Still lots going on down there. And Jonathan, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the legal things people should keep in mind when they're going to invest in real estate in the United States.
Yeah, again, how you hold your real estate investment. There's different states that have different rules about the kinds of vehicles or entities, you might have heard of, you've heard about the corporation. You might have heard something called the limited liability company, or limited partnership or limited liability, limited partnership. These are all different types of vehicles that are available depending on where you purchase your real estate and what state it is in, that you need to consider, and what's going to give you as a Canadian the best liability protection and the best tax treatment, especially cross-border.
We've got about 2.5 minutes left in the show, and I'm thinking for people who joined us late, maybe it'd be just a great idea, Glenn, if you could sum up for people why they need to go to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com right now and get signed up for the next presentation.
Absolutely, yeah. What's critical about people going to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com is because when they subscribe, not only will they be kept up to date on the upcoming dates and times where I'll be speaking in the Tri-City area, but they'll also get the benefit from time to time on my travels. One of my big passions is really traveling to the beautiful places in the world, and oftentimes when I'm in these beautiful places in the world, I'm inspired to deliver education about not just investing in real estate, but living a lifestyle where wealth and prosperity and abundance is the norm. And from these locations, I send out little principles or trainings on certain axioms or universal truths about living prosperously and building real sustainable intergenerational wealth. So when people go to Tri-City Wealth Workshop and they put their information into the website, they will get access to these additional trainings at no additional charge, because this is something that, as an education company, this is our passion, to educate people on the uncommon approach to investing, but also in living the life of a free human being, which is something that is very important to continue to develop and elevate while your bank account continues to develop and elevate as well. So that's the added benefit. And one more thing too, when people sign up online at TriCityWealthWorkshop.com and they say, they heard it from 570 News, we will actually give people who sign up on that website and attend physically our workshop, because they put 570 News, not only will they get a free ebook about the axioms of freedom, but they'll also get a free real book, my book, Transformational Real Estate, or an additional publication that we make available. So people either get an ebook and a live, real, solid paper book, I guess is now the term we use, since we got ebooks and real books nowadays. So they'll get the opportunity to get that bonus items as well too.
All right. Well, the show flew by. I feel we've just scratched the surface, so I do hope you're going to come back.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
My guest today, Glenn Estrabillo, who is the CEO of 1+12, and Jonathane Ricci joined us as well, legal counsel. Get online, go to TriCityWealthWorkshop.com, get signed up, and start finding out how you can produce, protect, and perpetuate wealth. And thanks for listening. More of Ask the Experts on the way here on 570 News.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah, buddy.
Good work, guys. Dave, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
Boom and boom.
I know. That was fun.